This week is going to basically make or break Bernie Sanders in the Democratic race. He has to have victories in at least 3 of the 5 races: Rhode Island, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and I believe Delaware. This clip from MSNBC is basically going to give us some details regarding this coming week, and I'm going to make the claim that Bernie Sanders is right when he says poor people don't vote, because if they did, I don't believe that things would be as bad as they are, and especially if they voted from informed positions. So anyway, let me run the clip and I'll comment from point in time to point in time.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Reid reporting from MSNBC's Washington, D.C. headquarters, and we're just 2 days away from the next big batch of primaries when voters in 5 states, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Delaware, head to the polls. The stakes are high as Republicans and Democratic frontrunners Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton inch closer to their party's nominations, and their rivals fight to stop them just short. Republicans will be vying for a total of 172 delegates on Tuesday, including the state of Pennsylvania, where 71 delegates are at stake. As for the Democrats, they'll be vying for a whopping 463 delegates. Most of the candidates are fanned out across the Northeast, with Bernie Sanders holding rallies today in Providence, Rhode Island, and New Haven, Connecticut, and Hillary Clinton campaigning in Bridgeport and Stamford, Connecticut. Donald Trump, meanwhile, will make an appearance in Hagerstown, Maryland, later today. Ted Cruz will hold rallies in Terre Haute and Evansville, Indiana, and both Trump and Clinton do lead in most of these states, according to recent polling, including a brand new NBC News Wall Street Journal Marist poll released just this morning, showing Clinton leading at 55% in Pennsylvania.
Now, I don't believe that Clinton poll, and there was another poll that came out that said Bernie Sanders was approximately 10 points behind. But for me, that same poll in the race between Donna Edwards and Chris Van Hollen basically has the same numbers, even though it's 2 different states. So it's kind of funny that those same numbers are holding court at this point.
And Trump at 45%. And joining me now here in D.C., E.J. Dion, Washington Post columnist and author of Why the Right Went Wrong, Conservatism from Goldwater to the Tea Party and Beyond, Maria Teresa Kumar of Voto Latino, and Michelle Bernard of the Bernard Center for Women. Thank you all for being here. So let's dig into, first of all, I guess the big news from this morning. Bernie Sanders was on Meet the Press. He made a comment that has essentially taken over my Twitter thread and that a lot of people are talking about. And he was asked why he's not doing better in states that have these high populations of lower income voters. Take a listen.
Poor people don't vote. I mean, that's just a fact. That's a sad reality of American society, and that's what we have to transform. We have, as you know, one of the lowest voter turnouts of any major country on earth. If we can significantly increase voter turnout so that low-income people and working people and young people participated in the political process, and we could have a voter turnout of 75%, and this country would be radically transformed.
And he's absolutely right. Poor people, poor black people in particular, tend not to vote. And then when shit happens, they want to complain all day long. You need to get your butts out there and vote. You can make a difference.
I mean, the statement, I guess, didn't strike me immediately as controversial, but EJ, there's been a lot of blowback about this, particularly on social media. What do you make of it?
Well, Bernie's right about the general election, that poor people tend to vote less than very well-off people. But he's not right about these primaries, that if you, partly because of the strong support that Hillary Clinton has won among African Americans, she's done rather well among the poor. I looked at the exit.
See, now, okay, and that all rolls back to poor people don't vote. So if the poor white people were voting, that would probably more than offset the poor black people that are voting. Okay, and let's just say the African American support that Hillary Clinton has. If the poor white people were voting, it would not be as large a factor.
In South Carolina and New York, she did better among lower-income voters. In states with smaller African-American populations, Massachusetts and Wisconsin, it's mixed. So, yes, for the long run, Democrats really have to increase turnout among lower-income people, but I don't think that explains what's happening in these primaries.
I read something interesting because as soon as I heard the comment, I just thought that sounds bizarre, and I looked into it, and there was a very interesting Pew Research study that tried to just look into this phenomenon. And what they saw was that, compared to 2008, despite the fact that Hillary Clinton might be doing well in low-income demographics throughout different states, it's nothing compared to the turnout that Barack Obama had in 2008. And so the question is, do young people, do African Americans, do Latinos have a sense of hope? It's not that somebody wakes up one day and says, I want to be a poor citizen. It is, I don't have hope, nothing changes, I have no reason to go out and vote because the politicians don't care about me. And I think that's the point that was lost.
Well, I think one of the things that Sanders said was absolutely true. Everything that he was saying about demographics, but also it's a little challenging if he's basically selling himself at the same time as the candidate of the downtrodden and the ones that is re-exciting the electorate. He sort of actually said, I'm sort of, right? And I think that that's what we need to dig into a little bit deeper. But also I think that we also have to have a broader conversation. One of the reasons that people are not participating in record numbers is that we have increasingly these different types of new modern
And she hit it on the head. It's the voter suppression laws that are in place that are also helping to reduce the vote. Point in case what happened in Arizona, where even the white people were having to stand online for 4 to 6 hours in order to vote.
Really
right. So when you start looking, at, yes, can someone really take off a day of work to spend 6 or 7 hours at the polls? No, they cannot, because they actually have to put food on the table, right? There's a lot of other barriers that no one's discussing. And I also think that if you are living in a lot of these neighborhoods where you do not see, when you see constant government failure on their part, where you are constantly being either racially profiled because you are of a certain color, whether your schools are not failing, whether you can't even get basic government services, you're not seeing yourself in that system.
Isn't that more pronounced in a caucus state, for instance, where you actually have to spend like hours and hours and hours?
Right, well, caucus states clearly, where Bernie has done well, which is the caucus states, that's an even bigger burden on the poor to vote. But just on your point, in terms of turnout, it's actually a mixed picture. In southern states, it looks like turnout is well down, and in some of the early states, and clearly some of that is that Barack Obama mobilized African-American voters to an unprecedented degree. But in other states, young
Latinos, women.
Yes, but in other states, the turnout is not down. If you compare turnout 08-06, it's down a little bit, but it's not hugely down.
For Democrats, it's not a revolutionary sort of turnover year, right? You have Democrats who are holding the White House, and so you almost have a re-elect type of constituency in many of these states.
But we keep having these conversations of sawing the voter among the young voter, the Latino voter, the African American voter, and the young woman. They're the same voter for the most part, right? I mean, demographically, the average Latino voter is a 27-year-old.
Right.
They are the heart of the millennial. When you start looking at single women who are in record number, they are, for the most part, at the heart of the millennial voter. When you start looking at the same thing with African American voters, when you start actually identifying their numbers, they're usually around 31, 32. So you're actually talking about what is it that we're actually missing when it comes to mobilizing that young voter of every hue to participate in this, because we're not
one thing, though, I think that was really important when you touched on the barriers to voting. When we see, the Voting Rights Act, a critical part of it being struck down in the United States, and all the other things that we see, it brings to mind something that somebody with the New York Times once said, which is that standing in line for 6 or 7 hours waiting to vote is a poll tax. That poor people cannot afford to pay.
Warning, that's so right, which A, shows how important this new Supreme Court nominee is, since this court, gutted the Voting Rights Act. But secondly, we got a warning about this in Arizona, where Arizona shut down most of its polling places. The mayor of Phoenix, Greg Stanton, says if you look at it, there were more shut down in Latino and African American neighborhoods. Right. That's a warning for what could happen in November.
Let's talk about...
All right, which is what I made reference to earlier. And I forget which one of these states is attempting to do the same thing. It might be Maryland. I know it's not Delaware, and I don't believe it's Rhode Island. So, and I don't think it's Connecticut. So it's either Pennsylvania or Maryland, or it could be Indiana. It could be Indiana. But one of the states is going to shut down a tremendous number of their polling places. And I saw some information on it, and I guess in a future video, which will be in the next 24 hours, I'm going to make reference to it somewhere.
At that.
Absolutely, but let's talk about, so in the immediate future, right, we're having this sort of big dust up over what Bernie Sanders said, but now we're going into a set of primaries that are taking place in some cases in places where in theory he should be able to motivate voters. Some place like Pennsylvania, a Rust Belt state, a state that's had some of these issues of economic lack. Look at what Hillary Clinton is doing versus Bernie Sanders right now. She's up 55-40 in the polls. If you then go and look at Democratic likely voters across what we're calling these Acela primary states, and that is Connecticut, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Maryland, Hillary Clinton consistently polling ahead of Bernie Sanders in these states. Why, in your view, and I'll start with you, EJ, Bernie Sanders has the message that in theory resonates with the very kind of voter who's hurting the most in this new economy, where you're having trade at the forefront, right, that people feel is hurting them. Why isn't Sanders doing better? It can't just be because lower income people are not turning out.
No, well, first of all, in any state with a large African American vote, and it's very high in Maryland, it's fairly high in Pennsylvania, Hillary Clinton does well. She is winning that community with roughly 70% consistently, so that's a big part of it. But I also think Pennsylvania is a really big deal, because after New York, if Bernie loses this big state where, as you say, they have really been hammered by deindustrialization, and if she has even half that margin, then I think the talk about not Bernie dropping out, everybody expects him to be in there again, but to kind of redirect his campaign is going to get, to be less negative against her, more about his message. I think that's going to get louder.
And there's a...
Okay, so, Pennsylvania, Maryland, job loss because of disastrous trade deals. How the hell do you vote for somebody who has championed every single trade deal that has caused you or people that you know or your state to basically lose jobs to China, Mexico, etc.? It's called voting against your own self-interest, and people inexplicably consistently do that, and it just infuriates me.
A lot of conversation right now within the Bernie camp also is like trying to figure out if they do have an exit strategy, how are they going to actually put their emails and those contacts to work? Because they've done an incredible job of really bringing in other folks that have not seen politics as a part of their lives.
Yeah, and if you're going to talk about this, issue of people at various income levels being motivated to vote, and you are not attracting a diverse coalition in terms of voters of color, can you actually get done what Bernie Sanders is trying?
Well, here's the thing that's so interesting about Bernie Sanders. When we look at the money that he's raising, it is mind-boggling. And when you look at the numbers of people that show up at rallies, to see him and hear him speak, it sort of makes one question why he's not doing better in these communities. And frankly, I don't have the answer other than I would guess that we are getting to a point in the election where you keep hearing that at this point in time, mathematically, it is impossible for Bernie Sanders to get the nomination. And so people who are going out to vote in primaries are thinking about pragmatics. Can Bernie Sanders be the Democratic nominee? And if possible, can he beat Donald Trump?
Yeah,
and I think that's part of the problem. You're feeling inevitable.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And you have a lot of people that if everything were equal and they didn't have any polling information, they would go out and vote for Bernie. But some people, and maybe quite a few people, feel that it's a lost cause, and therefore feel like it's a waste of time for them to go out and vote, which is exactly what they shouldn't do. No, irregardless, always vote. Not just because Bernie Sanders is running against Hillary Clinton, but there are other issues, other ballot issues, other candidates that are running for down ballot offices that you need to make your opinion known on. You know, things like district attorneys, prosecutors, and judges in our everyday lives sometimes may be more important to us than a presidential election. So please get out and vote no matter what they tell you.
You know, I think that is part of what's happened over the last couple of weeks to kind of push him down. But the Clinton campaign is in a difficult position because they need those young people in the fall, so they cannot be seen as pushing Bernie out of this race. And notice she only attacks him from the left on guns. She doesn't attack him from the right.
And at some point, all of this has to get put back together. These two very interesting, very motivated, but very different coalitions eventually have to come back together. All right, E.J. Dion and Maria Teresa Kumar are sticking around. Thank you so much to Michelle Bernard. And we have much.
All right, so that's what's happening with Bernie. And again, I just want to say, irregardless of what you think the inevitable winner is going to be, get out there and vote anyway, because, you know, polls are polls, and polls can be wrong. And your vote definitely does count and will count, especially now and for sure this coming fall.